I can still remember the buzz of the fluorescent lights in the hallway outside my therapist's office, the first time I decided to speak openly about what had become, in my mind, a tangled web of impulses, comfort, and secrecy. Even though this might sound dramatic, it's the truth. There's something about those lights. They seem to flicker in a slow, almost hypnotic pattern, as if reflecting the turmoil I felt inside. I'd been working a physically demanding job, one that had me in steel-toed boots and thick denim pants for 10 or 12 hours a day, and I carried the sweat of manual labor on my skin as I trudged into that office. My wife, Clara, had urged me to seek counseling. She said it was because she loved me, because she saw me wrestling with something she couldn't fully understand on her own, and wanted me to feel less alone. I was 30 years old at the time, past the point of ignoring that there was some deeper need inside me that wouldn't be quiet. I remember gripping the doorknob, inhaling deeply, and finally stepping inside. A plain white noise machine hummed from a corner of the room, while a water cooler stood by a small potted plant whose leaves drooped slightly from the stale indoor air. My therapist, Dr. Reese, was an even-voiced, mild-mannered professional in her 50s. She wore modest suits, spoke with clarity, and had a knack for quickly discerning when I was evading the heart of an issue. I could see my own reflection in the frames on the wall as I sat down, hair matted from wearing a hard hat all day, face streaked with traces of dust that I'd rubbed off with a quick splash of water in the restroom. Before we spoke a single word that day, I remember looking at my boots and thinking, if only you knew how I can't wait to take you off, slip on something soft, and stop feeling like the ground beneath me is always a battlefield. Of course, that was not the first confession I made. It would take a few sessions before I mentioned that, but it was there from the start, simmering beneath every awkward pause and every stammer that left my mouth. Is there something specific you'd like to talk about today? Dr. Reese asked, leaning back in her chair, legs crossed, pen poised above her notepad. I hesitated. I have some habits, interests, that are a bit outside the usual for someone like me. I guess I don't know how to... You can speak freely, she said in a reassuring tone, brushing back a lock of her brown hair. Anything you say stays here. I didn't speak up right then. Instead, I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the swirling pattern in the beige carpet. I couldn't find the words. It was as if my throat had tightened. She waited. She was used to that. The hush in the office wrapped around us like a buffer from the outside world. And so I took a leap, though I kept it vague at first. I mumbled something about tension, about needing an outlet, about how I would find relief in ways that I couldn't share with many people. She nodded calmly, asking if it was detrimental to my life. I shrugged. Detrimental? No. But it was confusing, and it rattled me with guilt sometimes, especially when Clara would look at me with concerned eyes, wanting to understand. After that initial session, I left with a sense of both dread and relief swirling through my chest, because I knew what I wanted to talk about, but I was still stalling. I was dancing around the key point. Why was it so hard for me to say it out loud? I had confided some of it to Clara, but never in the blunt, direct way that might unravel everything in front of a stranger's ears. A few days later, as I came home from the construction site, I found Clara seated on our living room couch, her bare feet tucked beneath her, a cup of herbal tea in her hands. She had that look again, the one that meant something serious was on her mind. She patted the cushion next to her, and I plopped down with a deep sigh, the cushions sagging under my weight. Long day? She asked softly. Yeah, I replied, shrugging. Every day's a long day if I'm out there under the sun all the time. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't really want to discuss my job right now. How was the session this week? She asked, searching my face. Did you bring up the real reason you wanted to go? I rubbed my palms against the rough fabric of my work pants. Not exactly. I tried to, but it's not easy to talk about. Clara rested her hand on my shoulder. I know. It's okay. I just want you to find a way to work through everything for both our sakes. I let out a shaky breath. I'm trying, I said. I was. Yet I also knew she wanted more from me, some honest unveiling, not the half-truths I'd been relying on. You know, she said gently, I don't judge you for what you do or what you wear. I'm just worried you haven't come to terms with it, that it's all knotted up in you, and I can see it weighing on you. I nodded, refusing to meet her eyes. I managed a small nod, though. You've been amazing. I just wish I could explain it to you better. She pressed her lips together. Maybe there's no neat explanation. Maybe that's okay. I wanted to smile at that, but something in me still braced for an unspoken condemnation. It was tricky. Later that evening, after a quick shower, I found myself alone in our bedroom. Clara was washing the dishes, her humming drifting down the hallway. On my side of the closet, buried behind the usual sweatshirts and a couple of seldom-worn blazers, were a few articles of clothing I kept hidden from casual inspection. A blouse made of satiny fabric, a flowing skirt with a soft, gentle drape, and a shoebox with items of makeup I'd experimented with. I felt a little flutter in my stomach as I slipped the blouse out. Just the gentle whisper of the fabric sliding over my arms made me sigh. It was a world away from the scratchy cotton and heavy denim I wore all day. There was a subtle, rebellious thrill, sure, but more than that, there was comfort, like sinking into a warm bath after hours of tension. It was difficult to put into words, even in my own mind, so how could I possibly articulate it to my wife or to Dr. Reese? I let the blouse rest against my torso for a moment in front of the mirror. Sometimes I stared at my reflection and felt a wave of calm wash over me. I'd take out a simple tube of eyeliner from the shoebox, apply a bit, and watch as my reflection transformed. It was never about putting on an elaborate performance. It was about the quiet, methodical focus it took to draw a smooth line, the hush that would settle in my brain. That night, I carefully put everything back, letting myself feel the serenity of that short ritual before changing into my usual bedclothes. Clara came in a few minutes later. I could see her eyes flick to the closet. She knew I kept certain things there, and we had an unspoken agreement that I could do as I pleased in private. Yet we both understood there was still more we needed to talk about, and we both let ourselves drift into that halfway space where it was acknowledged but not resolved. When the next therapy appointment rolled around, Dr. Reese once again asked if there was a specific subject I wanted to discuss in more detail. This time, I didn't let myself hesitate so long. I explained that I found solace in wearing items typically associated with women's fashion, that I had a collection of clothing that brought me peace. There's no single reason, I found myself saying, the words tumbling out. It's comforting, it's relaxing, it just feels right in those moments. It's not always about anything deeper. Sometimes I just want the softness. Sometimes I like the way it looks, on me specifically. But I can't pin down one reason that sums it all up. Dr. Reese set her pen down gently. How does your wife feel about it? I pressed my lips together. She's supportive, in her own way. She doesn't act disgusted or anything like that. But I can tell it's complicated for her too. She asks me why I do it. My answer changes every time. She nodded. So you feel there's more than one why behind your actions? Exactly, I said, exhaling. Some days it's about stress relief, like stepping out of the role I play at work or in social circles. Other days it's like a creative expression, an aesthetic I enjoy. Or it can feel like rebellion against the roughness I'm used to all day. I guess I'm struggling because people want a single, neat explanation, and I don't have one. It's complicated. She kept her gaze steady. That's not unusual. We don't always have just one motive for the things we do. Do you feel guilty or ashamed about it? There was a lump in my throat. Sometimes, because it's easier to pretend I'm the same as every other guy on my crew. Because it's easier not to raise questions, like my family's questions or my friends' questions. And I worry I'll lose something important if people find out. She made a note. And does wearing these clothes and using makeup in private bring you a sense of relief, let's call it? I nodded, a weight lifting from my shoulders as I admitted it. Yes, it's like breathing again. She took a moment before speaking again. You mentioned you also find it playful. Can you tell me more about that? I chewed on my lip. It's a chance to explore a different side of myself. I feel less confined. I guess it's partly about looking in the mirror and discovering a new face staring back at me, one that feels quietly liberating. It's not about disliking my usual self. It's just that this is me too, in a way. Her gentle smile was something I appreciated. So, your identity is multifaceted, and you find an outlet in this. Are you looking to make it a bigger part of your life, or do you prefer to keep it private? I paused. I'm not sure, I admitted. Part of me wants to be open, but that terrifies me. Another part of me is content slipping into that softness when I'm behind closed doors. We continued in that vein for the rest of the session, and as I left, I felt a little lighter. It wasn't as though a single conversation erased all confusion, but I'd cracked the door open, and Dr. Reese had a way of making it feel less like a shameful secret and more like a normal piece of my life that deserved space. At home, Clara was waiting in the kitchen, warming up leftovers. She'd prepared a stir-fry, and the scent of soy sauce and ginger hung in the air. I hugged her from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder, inhaling the fragrance of her shampoo. "How did it go?" she asked softly, turning her face toward me. I managed a small, tired smile. I finally told her the main issue, about the clothes and makeup. Clara pulled away enough to look me in the eye. "And how are you feeling now?" I shrugged. "Like a weight's off my chest, but there's a long road ahead." She brushed a stray hair from my forehead. "I'm proud of you." We sat down, ate together in silence for a moment, and then I felt that old tension creeping in. I realized we rarely talked about how she experienced all this. I decided to ask, "How do you feel about it, truly?" I ventured, looking into her eyes. She took a breath, as if gathering her words. "In the beginning, I was startled. I won't lie. We married young, both of us in our mid-20s, and I guess I hadn't known this about you then. But once I realized you weren't hiding something harmful, I tried to be open-minded. The part that worries me is how torn up you seem over it. I wish you'd see that I'm not angry. I might not fully grasp the experience, but I'm here. I just hope you can learn to be kinder to yourself about it." I felt my eyes prickle with emotion. "I'm trying," I murmured again, my voice wavering. "I am. There's just so much noise in my head. What people would say, what I've always believed about what a man is supposed to be." She placed her hand over mine. "I know, but you don't have to live by someone else's definition all the time." Something in me exhaled in relief. We finished dinner and we chatted about lighter things. Her day at work as a paralegal, the silly drama of a coworker's endless complaints, whether we should plant a small herb garden on the windowsill. Still, I could feel a quiet shift between us. We had confronted the truth a bit more directly, and it wasn't burning down the house. That was progress. Over the next couple of weeks, I fell into a rhythm. Go to work, come home, talk with Clara if we felt up to it, and attend therapy sessions every Thursday afternoon. Dr. Reese helped me peel back the layers, exploring how I'd always found comfort in softness, like the first time I'd touched certain fabrics as a kid. But I forced myself not to dwell on that too much, because it felt like wading into uncertain territory. I was an adult now, and I wanted to focus on how it influenced my present. Meanwhile, I noticed the changes in my own day-to-day feelings. After a grueling shift where I might be carrying heavy materials around or hammering nails until my arms ached, I would come home exhausted and drained. On days when I decided to slip into those clothes, I felt a sense of relief, as though I was setting down a heavy load I'd carried for too long. Sometimes I'd just spend 10 or 15 minutes standing in front of the mirror, letting the swirl of a skirt brush around my knees. Other times, I might paint my nails or apply a bit of eyeliner, carefully, quietly, even if I wiped it off 10 minutes later. It offered a form of peace. The tricky part was always the outside world. Beyond our front door, I kept it hidden. My coworkers were mostly rugged guys who did a lot of joking around, occasionally jabbing each other with humor that wasn't always gentle. I liked them well enough, but I couldn't see them taking kindly to this side of me. It felt easier to keep up appearances, the dust, the steel-toed boots, the worn cap over my hair, and I couldn't figure out if that was because I truly wanted the separation or if I was just scared. One Saturday afternoon, Clara and I drove out to the house of an old friend of mine, Mark, for a barbecue. Mark and I had gone to trade school together. Clara had grown friendly with Mark's wife, Sabrina, over the years, and we often hung out as couples. Their backyard smelled of freshly cut grass and charcoal smoke. The sun was high in the sky, baking the wooden deck. Mark was flipping burgers and hot dogs on the grill, whistling some tune that drifted across the yard. While sipping on a cold soda, I tried to relax. At one point, Mark noticed a small chip in the black paint on my fingernail. I'd forgotten to remove the polish, an oversight that made my stomach lurch. I'd painted my nails that morning, thinking I'd have time to clean them before leaving, but we ended up in a rush. "Hey, looks like some leftover paint there," Mark joked, laughing as if it was no big deal. "You start painting your nails now, bud?" There was a tinge of teasing in his voice, but I suspected there might be genuine curiosity lurking beneath it. My mind scrambled for a response, trying to keep it casual. I shrugged, forcing a grin. "Yeah, just messing around with Clara. She was doing her nails and I hopped in for fun." He barked a friendly laugh. "Well, if you ever need tips on color choice, ask Sabrina. She's always messing with new styles." I nodded, feeling a bead of sweat roll down the back of my neck, though the conversation moved on quickly. My shoulders eased a bit. That small moment reminded me that sometimes people didn't react as harshly as I feared. Then again, I hadn't come close to revealing the entire truth, so it was hardly a fair test. We spent the rest of the day eating, chatting about Mark's new workshop, Sabrina's upcoming marathon, and random gossip from our old classmates. Clara caught my eye once or twice, sending me a silent question. "Are you okay?" I'd just nod, though my thoughts buzzed with the near slip-up. On the drive home, Clara put a hand on my leg and kept quiet for a few minutes. When she finally spoke, it was gentle. "See? That wasn't so bad," I exhaled. "Yeah, I guess I expected a meltdown or something." She squeezed my thigh lightly. "People can surprise you. You always think they're going to react one way, but sometimes they're more relaxed than you'd expect." "True," I said, But I also knew I wasn't ready to open up about everything. Not yet. Maybe not ever. In another therapy session the following week, I told Dr. Reese about the barbecue. She listened attentively, tapping her pen against her notepad. It sounds like you had a minor moment of exposure, and it ended relatively well. Yeah, I was worried Mark would give me a hard time or spread rumors, but it wasn't that serious. She leaned forward. What does that tell you about your fear? My fingers twisted in my lap. That sometimes I'm expecting the worst, and maybe I shouldn't assume everyone will freak out. Precisely, she agreed. Yet it sounds like you're still reluctant to reveal more about your dressing habits. I nodded. Absolutely. I'm not sure how to integrate that part of myself with my everyday life. It's not exactly mainstream, especially in the circles I move in. My wife is the only one who sees it regularly, and I guess that's enough for now. But I can't deny it'd be nice to feel less like I'm hiding in the shadows. Her eyes were sympathetic. Change doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can decide what you're comfortable sharing and what's private. The key is making sure you aren't damaging your own well-being by burying it too deep. We talked about that for a while, discussing hypothetical scenarios. What if I told a close friend or a sibling? If I had a sibling I trusted, could that help me feel a bit more free? I considered it, but I wasn't sure I was ready. Even so, the conversation felt liberating. Dr. Reese's acceptance of my experiences was like a balm on a wound I'd hidden for years. Clara and I continued our own talks at home. We'd sit in the living room, me in sweatpants, her in pajamas, each nursing a cup of tea, the warm glow of a lamp lighting our corner of the room. We'd talk about my day at work. Did the guy suspect anything? Did I feel comfortable? And we'd talk about how she was coping with it. Once she admitted, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm being selfish by wanting you to keep up certain appearances in front of my parents or friends, because I'm not sure how they'd react, and I don't want to deal with that drama." I closed my eyes, shaking my head. No, it's natural to worry. Honestly, it's not like I'm telling you I want to show up at your family reunion in full outfit tomorrow. I just want to not feel suffocated, to have a safe space to explore this piece of who I am. She nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of tea. And you do. We have our home, our privacy. But it's more than that for you, isn't it? It's not just about wearing the clothes. It's about how it soothes you, how it unlocks a part of you that you can't express at work or anywhere else. My heart clenched at that. You've put it perfectly, even if I can't fully articulate why it means so much. She smiled softly. I might not get every subtlety, but I see how it makes you feel better. After that, we decided we'd try something new, a small outing, just the two of us. It wouldn't be a full reveal to the world or anything, but Clara proposed a drive to a neighboring town where we knew no one, so I could wear something less typical for me, maybe even something in line with what I wore privately, and see how it felt to step outside the house that way. My stomach fluttered at the idea, a mix of excitement and raw fear, but the thought of living life in a bubble forever also held its own weight. The night before we went on that outing, I laid out a knee-length skirt I liked, black with a subtle floral pattern near the hem. I paired it with a simple blouse, short-sleeved and light-colored, something that contrasted with the darkness of the skirt. I also set aside a small bag of makeup essentials, a light foundation, a subtle lipstick, that same eyeliner I'd used 100 times at home. My hands shook as I thought about it. Walking outside, in public, was an entirely different universe from the solitude of my bedroom mirror. Clara offered to come into the bathroom with me the next morning to help me do my eyeliner more neatly, and I almost laughed at the intimacy of that gesture. We'd been a couple for years, but this was new territory. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning with equal measures of excitement and dread. When morning came, I showered, shaved carefully, and then stood in front of the bathroom mirror while Clara used a small makeup brush to blend foundation along my jawline. "This is nerve-wracking," I admitted, trying to keep my head still while she worked. "You'll be fine," she said, her voice soothing. "We'll head out of town, grab lunch, maybe do a little shopping. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, we can just hop in the car and come back." I nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat. When she finished with the eyeliner, I looked in the mirror and saw my reflection with a subtle cat-eye flick, just enough to accentuate my features. My heart gave a loud thump. It's not as if I was unrecognizable, but I did feel different, more balanced, more at ease. Even so, my nerves were sizzling. "Let's do this," Clara said, offering a confident smile. We got in the car, me wearing the skirt and blouse, with a light cardigan draped over my shoulders. My work boots, ironically, had been replaced by a pair of simple flats. Nothing fancy, but a lot more feminine than anything I'd worn in public before. My pulse pounded in my ears during the drive, and I caught Clara glancing my way, giving me encouraging nods. When we finally arrived in that neighboring town, we parked near a small cafe with an outdoor seating area. My palms were clammy. Slipping out of the car, I felt the breeze swirl around my legs. It was such a small detail, but being outside in a skirt was drastically different from wearing it behind our bedroom door. Clara reached for my hand, and we walked toward the cafe. A handful of people milled about. Most paid me no mind, their eyes focused on their own errands. An older couple sipped coffee at a table by the entrance, and if they looked my way, I couldn't tell. My heart hammered anyway. It was so ordinary, and yet for me, extraordinary. We found a small table in a corner of the patio, partially shaded by a broad umbrella. I tried to calm my nerves by gazing at the menu. My voice shook a little when I ordered an iced coffee and a sandwich. The waiter's expression was neutral. He might have glanced at me a second longer than normal, but all he said was, "Coming right up." Clara leaned over, pressing her hand to mine. "See? Nobody's making a scene." I laughed shakily. "I guess I expected pitchforks." She rolled her eyes with a good-natured grin. "We're just people grabbing lunch. That's all anyone sees here." That moment was quietly thrilling. My fear slowly ebbed as we chatted about random topics, a movie we wanted to see, the best places to travel in the fall, a new recipe she'd found for vegetarian lasagna. I found myself occasionally resting my hand on the table, admiring my lightly painted nails in the daylight. Each time a stranger strolled by, I felt a pang of self-consciousness, but nothing drastic happened. No sneers, no pointed fingers. Occasionally, I thought I spotted a curious glance, but it could have been my imagination. After lunch, we wandered down the sidewalk, looking in store windows. I resisted the urge to constantly fuss with my hair or my outfit. There was a little clothing boutique on the corner, and Clara coaxed me inside. My heart fluttered again, especially when the store clerk greeted us with a friendly hello. We took our time browsing the racks, and at one point, Clara held up a light sundress in front of me, eyebrows raised in question. "You'd look cute in this," she said softly. I nearly blushed, but I nodded, taking it to the fitting room. Clara squeezed my hand in solidarity as I disappeared behind the curtain to try it on. The soft fabric slid over my body smoothly, and I took a small breath, letting myself enjoy the moment. My reflection stared back at me, eyes still lined with that subtle cat-eye flick, lips parted in an unsteady smile. My heart thudded, but I felt good, calmer, aligned somehow. I stepped out timidly, and Clara's eyes lit up with approval. The clerk gave me an easy, polite nod, as if to say the dress suited me. Again, no uproar, just a normal shopping moment. I turned around, examining myself in the mirror from different angles, half wondering how bizarre it was that something so mundane felt so monumental. We ended up buying the dress. It wasn't cheap, but Clara insisted. She said it would be a nice reminder of a day when I took a step toward living more freely, at least in certain contexts. Once I got back in the car and we headed for home, I felt an odd mixture of exhilaration and fatigue, as if I'd run a marathon. Clara squeezed my hand and said she was proud of me. I just stared out the window, watching the scenery blur by, carrying a swirl of gratitude and lingering anxiety. Back home, I changed into my usual lounge shorts and a t-shirt. I felt more exhausted than I had in weeks, but it was a good kind of exhaustion, a sense of having crossed a threshold. That night, Clara and I curled up in bed, and she rested her head on my shoulder while I stared at the ceiling, replaying the day's events in my mind. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." She glanced up at me, smiling softly. "Of course. I'm here, always." Therapy was a different experience after that day. Dr. Reese listened with an intrigued smile as I described the outing. "It was terrifying, but no one spat on me, no one laughed in my face," I said, shrugging. "I'm not sure if it's something I do often, but it felt—" I paused, trying to phrase it in a way that avoided certain words. "It felt liberating, and also strangely ordinary." Dr. Reese clasped her hands in her lap. "How has it changed how you see yourself?" I took a breath. I guess I realized how many assumptions I'd been making about how people might react. But also, it drove home that I do this for me, not for other people. It's comforting, it can be playful, and yes, it can be a bit rebellious. It doesn't have to be about one single motive. She nodded. "So you're allowing yourself a broader understanding of your own behavior. That might lessen your guilt." I stared at my scuffed work boots, the same ones that had walked 100 job sites. "Yeah, I'm definitely feeling less guilt than before. Clara's been incredible. I wish I could find one perfect explanation for her, but I still can't." Dr. Reese leaned forward. "And do you think she needs that? Or is she learning to accept the complexity too?" I hesitated, mindful of that word, but I responded carefully. "She's understanding that it's not just about one thing. I think she's becoming more comfortable with that." It felt good to talk about it with Dr. Reese. There was no magical remedy, but each conversation gave me a sense of shedding old layers of shame or confusion. I knew there'd be bumps in the road, but I was starting to see them as part of the process. As the weeks turned to months, Clara and I carved out small routines. Sometimes, if we both had a quiet weekend, we'd set aside an hour or two just for me to explore a new outfit or experiment with a new makeup look in a supportive environment. Other times, I would sneak small expressions of that side of me even in my everyday clothes, a floral scarf around my neck, or nail polish in a subtle shade that might not draw too much attention. No one at work seemed to notice the small shifts, or if they did, they never pressed me about it. The most that happened was a few remarks along the lines of, "You look like you're taking good care of yourself. You've been in a better mood lately." I'd laugh it off, saying I'd found a better work-life balance, which was partly true. In the evenings, once I got home, I'd step into my favorite slippers, slip off the grit of the workday, and let that softer side of me breathe. Still, challenges arose. One came in the form of a family reunion on Clara's side, a big gathering that included extended relatives. Her grandparents were old-fashioned folks, her uncles and aunts from small towns, many of them with traditional views. I felt uneasy leading up to that event, worried that if any sign of my true habits peeked out, I might be stared at or ridiculed. Clara, sensing my tension, reassured me. Nobody's expecting you to show up in anything you're not comfortable with. You can just be yourself the way you always have been at these things. We'll have our private space at home. I agreed, though I hated feeling as if I was packing a part of my identity into a box for the sake of an afternoon with relatives. But that was reality sometimes. We went, I wore a tidy button-down shirt and jeans, and we ate barbecue and potato salad under the shade of tall oak trees. People asked me about work, about house projects Clara and I had in mind, about when we might have kids. All the standard questions. A few times, I caught a glimpse of Clara's eyes, as if she was checking on me from across the yard. I gave her a small nod, letting her know I was fine. Later, back at home, as I took off my dusty shoes, Clara opened the closet, pulled out a silk blouse, and handed it to me. "You must be craving this," she said gently, and I couldn't help but grin, changing out of my family reunion attire and into the lightness of that fabric. She offered me a quiet shoulder rub while I just breathed. I remember feeling intense gratitude for her. She never mocked me, never rolled her eyes at me for all the turmoil. Even if she sometimes struggled to fully understand it, she stood by me. Time passed, and I found myself more and more comfortable with the idea that there might never be a grand, singular explanation. Dr. Reese once asked me, if someone demanded you define your reasons in one sentence, what would you say? I thought about it before answering. I'd probably say, it feels good in multiple ways, and that's enough. She smiled. Sometimes that's the healthiest way to see it. There doesn't need to be a single overarching narrative. Yet with understanding comes new questions. Should I tell my parents? They were older, living a few states away. We had a cordial relationship, but we weren't extremely close. My dad was a retired factory worker who prided himself on old-school masculinity, while my mom was a homemaker who rarely rocked the boat. Part of me considered that maybe they never needed to know, but another part of me wondered if they should, so I wouldn't feel like I was living a double life. I mulled it over for a while, talking it through with both Clara and Dr. Reese. In the end, I decided not to force a confession. If my parents ever visited for an extended period, or if some scenario came up, maybe then I would. But for now, it wasn't pressing. I had enough on my plate learning how to just be me without unraveling old illusions for everyone else. One evening, I sat on the couch with Clara, scrolling through social media on my phone. I stumbled across an acquaintance, someone I vaguely knew from high school, who had opened up online about a personal journey that was quite different from mine, but still involved stepping outside societal norms. As I read through the comments, I noticed some were supportive and others were mocking. My stomach churned at the negative ones, imagining what it would feel like if that scorn were directed at me. Clara glanced over my shoulder. "That's tough," she whispered, reading some of the barbed remarks. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I guess that's the risk of being open about anything that doesn't fit expectations. There will always be a few who feel the need to criticize. But there are also the supportive ones," Clara pointed out, "and sometimes that outweighs the harsh comments." I locked my phone, setting it aside. I know, I'm still not ready to broadcast my private life to everyone, but maybe someday I'll be more comfortable. It's a marathon, not a sprint. She nodded. However it unfolds, you don't have to walk it alone. Over time, the therapy sessions became less about dissecting the specifics of my dressing habits and more about building resilience, how to navigate a world that often insists on narrow definitions. Dr. Reese encouraged me to cultivate healthy coping mechanisms, to figure out how to manage stress without always needing to cloak myself in a hidden identity. And ironically, the more confident I felt overall, the more I embraced my love of soft fabrics and playful eyeliner as just one of many facets of my day-to-day life. There were nights I didn't feel the urge to dress up at all, and that was fine. Other times it felt essential, like I couldn't fully breathe without it. Clara and I developed a deeper closeness. She started asking me about the textures I liked best, or which style of eyeliner was easiest for me to apply. Sometimes we'd share quiet laughter when I'd accidentally poke myself in the eye with the brush. She even suggested that we clear a space in the closet so I wouldn't have to hide my clothes behind my hoodies anymore. One day, I sheepishly asked if I could store my makeup in a small drawer in the bathroom rather than a shoebox. She immediately agreed. That felt like a surprisingly big step, my things coexisting next to hers, each item bridging the gap between secrecy and everyday life. We had our moments of tension, of course. There were days Clara didn't feel like dealing with the complexities, especially when she was stressed from her job. There were moments I would see a harsh comment online or overhear a coworker making fun of someone else's perceived differences, and it sent me spiraling inward. But overall, there was a sense that we were in this together, learning how to live in a gray area that few people openly acknowledge. One bright autumn afternoon, as the leaves were turning gold and the air carried a mild chill, Clara and I went for a walk in a nearby park. I wore jeans and a comfortable sweater, not overtly feminine, but still a cut that I preferred and that felt softer than the stiff, rugged clothes I normally wore to work. We strolled along the path, watching children run around in the leaves, children who were all well over the age of toddlerdom, squealing as they hopped into piles of foliage, and older couples feeding ducks near a small pond. Clara slid her arm through mine, leaning her head on my shoulder. "You seem lighter," she observed. "I do?" She nodded, smiling at me. "Yeah, like you're not carrying as many secrets anymore." I exhaled slowly, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. "I still have them," I said, thinking about the layers of hidden clothes, the faint swirl of fear about who might discover my habits. "But I guess it's not quite so heavy." She gave my arm a gentle squeeze. "Maybe that's a sign you're getting more comfortable in your own skin, or maybe just more at peace with not having a neat reason for everything." I let out a soft laugh. "It's definitely not one single reason," I said, repeating the phrase that had become almost a mantra in my therapy sessions. "It's so many reasons. The feel of silk after a day in work boots, the little rush of painting my nails, the calm that comes with the eyeliner. It's rebellious in a way, but also just soothing. Maybe that's okay." We walked on side by side, stepping over acorns scattered on the path. There was no script for this, no set of bullet points we were supposed to follow, but in that simplicity, I found comfort. Eventually, Dr. Reese and I decided to space out our sessions more, once a month instead of weekly. When that first monthly appointment rolled around, I perched in the familiar chair, crossing one ankle over my knee. She looked pleased to see I was more at ease. "So," she began, "anything particular on your mind today?" I considered it. "I guess I wanted to update you on how things are going. Clara and I went shopping again in that little town. I didn't wear a full outfit this time, just a more androgynous style. It felt good to not hide, but also not draw too much attention. We had a nice time." "That's wonderful," she said. "And are you finding more confidence in exploring these parts of your life?" I leaned back in the chair, feeling the slight squeak of the cushion. "Yes, I am. And I've also realized that I don't need a definitive reason. People always ask why. My wife, you, even me. I used to think I had to come up with a single crystallized answer, like it was about identity or purely stress relief or a desire to challenge norms. But it's all of that and more. I've started to accept that it's simply part of who I am in a big, messy, beautiful way." Her eyes lit up with understanding. "That's a significant realization." Yeah, I said, a faint smile curling on my lips. I guess I'm starting to make peace with it not needing to fit in a tidy box. That's what's helped me move forward with less shame. We wrapped up that session with a lightness I hadn't felt before. As I left her office, the fluorescent lights didn't seem as harsh, and the waiting room chairs looked less intimidating. I'd come a long way from the day I first stared at my own dusty boots in front of her. That night, Clara and I decided to order pizza for dinner. We curled up in the living room, the cardboard box open on the coffee table, while we watched a new show on a streaming service. About halfway through the episode, Clara paused it and turned to me. "Do you ever think about telling people beyond me, your therapist, maybe Mark or Sabrina?" I set my half-eaten slice of pepperoni down, wiping my hands on a napkin. I do think about it. Sometimes I even feel close to telling Mark because he's a good friend. But then I imagine him reacting awkwardly, or worse, feeling betrayed that I never said anything before. It's complicated. She nodded, giving me a thoughtful look. You don't owe anyone the full details of your life if you're not comfortable. But maybe if you told him, you could have one more person you don't have to hide from. That might be nice. I considered her words, my heart picking up speed. Maybe one day, but for now, I'm okay with just the two of us and Dr. Reese, knowing I'm not ready for that next step. Clara nudged my knee. No pressure. I'm just curious. She resumed the show, and I nestled closer to her, feeling grateful for her presence. We had grown, both of us, and though the future was still unknown, I no longer felt as if I were drowning in secrecy. Sometime later, Mark invited me for an afternoon of fishing at a lake he loved. I went, wearing my usual rugged clothes because it was a muddy shoreline, but I carried with me a sense of calm I hadn't had before. We talked about life, relationships, the possibility of him moving to a new city for work. At one point, as the late afternoon sun sparkled on the water, he studied me for a moment and said, "Hey, you seem different lately. Happier or something?" I reeled in my fishing line, checking the bait. "Yeah, just doing some personal work," I replied. He nodded, letting the moment hang. I felt a flicker of bravery, wondering if this was the time to reveal a little more. My heart thumped, but in the end, I decided to let it go. It wasn't quite the right moment. Maybe another day, maybe not. The important thing was that I was no longer drowning in a sense of guilt or confusion. Even if I never told him, I was forging a path that felt more authentic to me. Eventually, through therapy and quiet reflection, I realized that my reasons, be they about softness, creativity, stress relief, or a sense of playful rebellion, were all valid. It wasn't one single answer. And that was all right. Clara and I built a life where I could come home, kick off my boots, and slip into a different world for a while, if that's what I needed. We found ways to still laugh, to share stories, to make dinner plans, to watch movies, to have normal arguments about the laundry or the grocery list. Life went on in all its messy fullness. I sometimes recalled an image from those early therapy days, me in that chair, terrified to mention the clothes I wore in private. If I could go back and comfort that earlier version of myself, I'd whisper, "It's okay that there isn't just one reason. It's okay that people might ask why. And you don't have a single neat answer. You don't have to explain it perfectly." My wife would sometimes see me after a rough workday, peeling off my sweaty clothes, stepping into a silky garment, and she would simply smile. Sometimes she'd say, "Long day, huh?" And I'd just sigh, letting that soft fabric speak for the comfort I needed. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Clara asked me, "Do you ever feel like you found what you needed all along, or is it still evolving?" I thought about it. Both. I found enough to keep me going, but I'm sure there's more to learn as I move forward. She gave me a small kiss on the cheek. I think that's a good place to be. I pulled the covers over us, my heart content. Across the room in the closet hung garments of every type. Some were my typical work clothes, some were comfort pieces with soft lace, and some were in-between styles that defied easy classification. I was learning that it was fine not to have a rigid boundary. It was fine to exist in that hazy, personalized space. I drifted off to sleep, remembering how much simpler life had been when I was too young to worry about society's judgments, but also how fulfilling it was now to embrace my complexity. Yes, the world could be unkind, and yes, I had to be cautious. But in my home, in my own skin, I could let the tension slip away and feel at peace. Waking up early the next morning, Clara still asleep beside me, I reflected on the question people kept asking. Why? And I let the answers float freely. The feel of silk after work boots, the ritual of eyeliner that clears my mind, the anonymity, the beauty of it all, the rebellious thrill of it, the comfort, the joy, the sense of alignment. All of it, none of it. It's everything and nothing, tangled together. Maybe that's just who I am, and maybe that's enough. As the sun's rays began painting our bedroom in a gentle golden hue, I felt that old knot of anxiety in my chest loosen a little more, replaced by a sense of calm, because I finally realized I didn't need a single reason. I didn't need to fit everything into a box or script. I didn't need a perfect explanation. Maybe in the end, not needing that one answer was what set me free. Rolling over, I gently squeezed Clara's hand as she stirred awake. She blinked, turning to me, a sleepy smile on her lips. No words were needed in that moment. She understood I was finding my footing in a world that often demands clarity. And as I stretched, rising to face another day, I felt the fabric of my life weaving itself into something that felt more authentic, more expansive, and oddly comforting. There was no thunderclap of resolution, no grand reveal to the masses. Yet I realized I didn't crave that anymore. The soft morning light, the acceptance in Clara's eyes, the memory of stepping out of my comfort zone on that sidewalk cafe. Those were enough small triumphs to carry me forward. My old doubts might surface again from time to time, but that was okay. In the swirl of reasons or lack thereof, I could rest, knowing I was allowed to be me in every form. Everyone asks why. My wife, my therapist, even me. And the truth is that there's no single, neat answer. It's the feel of silk contrasting with the grime of a construction site. It's the meditative precision of applying eyeliner after a day that felt chaotic. It's about blending into the background sometimes and standing out at other times. It's about seeking comfort and calm, about playing with a side of my identity that isn't typically acknowledged. It's about pushing against the boundaries I once thought were locked. Maybe it's all of those reasons, maybe it's none, but I've realized that I don't need to tie myself into knots looking for one defining explanation. The complexity itself is real and valid. Maybe not needing a single reason is more than enough.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.